And there we go. Welcome to our second Artist in the Window Artist Talk of the summer of 2020. I guess for posterity, I should say it's July 9th, 2020. And we have our second Artist in the Window, Leslie Leong. I want to express my gratitude for being able to work and explore culture and talk with each other and make community in the traditional territory of the Tagish people, where the Kwanlundan First Nation and the Ta'an Council govern. And I'm grateful that they do. And I'm here today with Leslie Leong, who's our second Artist in the Window. I'll turn it over to her once I talk about our funders. The Yukon Artists at Work, we're a not-for-profit society. We mostly are self-supporting, but we received Arts Fund project funding for this Artist in the Window summer project. We also were able to cooperate with Music Yukon. So Leslie Leong is actually our first Arts in the Park artist. Music Yukon for years, like what, over 20 years or something like that, has done this wonderful thing where there's live music in the park and there's an artist demonstrating and there's a crowd of people, she said nostalgically. Hopefully that's something we get to do again someday. But for now, when we came up with this idea over the course of the winter and I approached Music Yukon because it seemed a bit like what they were going to be doing with Arts in the Park, they were really glad to hear our plan because they had a plan. You see, they're broadcasting the Arts in the Park concerts over CJUC, the local community radio station, as a way of having the event happen without people gathering. And they had no idea what they were going to do for visual art. And we are what they're going to do. So without further ado, here's Leslie Leong. Hello. She's going, so Leslie, tell me that what you're working on in the window this week.
So I'm working on this dress made of milk jugs. I call it Milkmaid. It's made of only milk jugs and pop rivets. So I put them together with pop rivets. And I cut them apart. So each of these panels I use, and this top part I also use in the top of the dress. Yeah, and oh yes, the reason why I'm making one is because I lost one. So I had one that was exhibited frequently or each year at the Redesign Fair. It was also worn by Lynn Fabio. Actually, here it is the one. Was worn by Lynn Fabio in the fashion show for the Junction Arts, what is it, the Sewing Through the Landscape, the artist residency. So, yeah.
Yeah, in Haines Junction. It's such a great thing. Yeah. And then at the last Redesign Fair,
it blew off in the winter. So sad. Yeah. And I tried to find it, and I even put notices. I thought, I didn't find it, so I thought maybe someone might have picked it up for me.
It would have been kind of white on white, though, at
that point. Yeah. And it was windy.
Yeah, and it must have broken your heart, because
it did. It was so sad.
It was such a beautiful thing you made, and also you kind of inadvertently littering.
Yes, I felt bad.
But you're recreating it, and that's wonderful.
Yes. It'll be a little bit different for sure, because this will be version 2.0.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's part of your series of dress sculptures based on. But this will actually be wearable.
Yes, the other one was, and I do want this one to be wearable too. That's why I had to pad the mannequin, because it's not realistic, the mannequin. So it has to be big enough that it can fit a real person.
Fair enough. Cool. So would you like to talk a little bit about, we had a question from Dee Bailey about your process in working with the plastic.
Oh, yeah. So originally I decided to use milk jugs to make swans, because one of the schools wanted to do a swan project. And so I thought, okay, what can we make it out of? And I'm passionate about reusing materials instead of buying new materials. So I figured out a way to draw parts onto the milk jug, and you use the whole milk jug except for the lid, and you turn it into a milk jug swan. This one's seen better days because it's been squished in a bag, but anyways, yeah. And the reason why this material is great is because it's flexible, it's easy to cut, it's easily available, and it's bendable. So it's kind of like the wrapping presents, the ribbon. as you can see, this little piece here is bent that way, but if you do the ribbon thing, like you do, then it curves the other way, or you can curve it back up the other way. So,
Cool.
yeah. So it's a very versatile material.
And it's also very light.
Yes, very light.
And
Really.
so you can also use heat with it, is that right?
Yes, you can. It helps to bend and form. You just have to make sure it cools before you let it go.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can also actually melt holes into it and all things like that. Like actually the electric powered plastic plant was the first thing that I made with, yeah, actually I made that before the swans, I guess it was. So that was for the TEDx Whitehorse set design. It was one of 3 pieces. And yeah, it's got milk jugs and pop bottles and water bottles and egg cartons. All
Wow.
plastic, yeah. Electric powered plastic.
So there's also these 2 figures up here, which have a nice. Would you like to? Here, I'll bring the light through them. Would you like
Sure.
to talk about? Because transparency seems to be something you enjoy.
Yes, I do like when things you can see through. I don't know. It's just very beautiful. So these are 2 formed on a pregnant woman, and they're made out of sewing patterns, and you can see the light coming through them. I really, so anyways, so this is just sewing patterns, partly because they're recycled, but also because it honors the whole process of sewing, which we don't honor enough in our society, I think, like we do, for example, sheet metal workers who do the same. They have a pattern and they cut it out and then they make things. Well, people, seamstresses and tailors do that too, but we don't honor it in the same way. So I find that it's also a way of honoring that process.
And that works kind of well with the fact that these are depicting someone who's making another person inside their bodies too. So there's a
making.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then I sometimes use those with kids in workshops, using, it's hard to see, I guess, because of the lack of light inside, but making little vessels. We made troll dishes once, actually.
Oh, cool.
Out of, the sewing patterns.
And you said, although the patterns are like tissue paper, it's a much stronger tissue paper than, your standard issue.
Yes.
So
they're very light, very thin, but they're also quite strong. Yeah, whereas tissue paper just kind of shreds.
So Janet Patterson had a question about the moment when you knew that you were going to make being an artist your life's work.
So I suppose it wasn't necessarily just a moment, but
it was more of a process.
Yeah, process. But so it was back in 94, I guess, around 94, 95. And I was already doing a lot of photography. And actually in 95, I gave birth to my son and I wanted to be home with him. So I knew this was coming, so I had to plan. So I left my engineering job at the government and decided to, really do photography and graphic design because I could do it from home. And because I'd been doing photography on the side anyways, and I also had a company with a friend in Vancouver for a couple of years, a graphic design company. I was more the manager, but I learned a lot and I helped a lot, so I knew stuff. So that was kind of the beginnings, but it was more of a way to be home and make income, and that grew into more of the art side of things as I participated in the Great Northern Arts Festival, actually, and applied for Arts Council grants and got a few of those. And I thought, oh, maybe, this is great. I really enjoy this much more. I find it way more fulfilling than the other stuff that I had been doing.
And one of the things, I find your work is often concerned with materials and their properties, and ingenious uses or reuses of the materials. Do you find that some of your engineering background plays a part in your art making?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's what, I mean, probably lots of people can figure out ways to do these, but for sure, I think that's just that way of thinking that, oh, okay, here's a useful material, or here's a material that I like, how can I use it? And that process of problem solving, I think that's, for me, part of the challenge that I really like. Yeah.
I like telling people art eats everything.
It does, it's true.
Anything that you happen to have, it'll find a way to put it to use. Cool. So would you like to talk a bit, speaking of eating everything, about the redesign fair?
Yeah, so the redesign fair is a fair that was our 5th anniversary last year. Darren Holcomb and I have put that on each year in the last 5 years because we're both passionate about recycled materials. Part of the piece is that we feel like we should be using recycled materials because we should be more like an ecosystem. We shouldn't be a society or a system or an economic system that just uses and then throws away. We should be circulating that stuff back around again and reusing it like an ecosystem. All the waste gives birth to new life. And so, yeah, we wouldn't have a lot of the problems we have now if we behaved more like that. So that's sort of where that comes from for both of us. And the other thing so the redesign fair is all artisans and their products that are made substantially out of recycled materials. And lots of times people think that might be junky looking stuff, but it's actually really beautiful. And that's part of the drive for us, is to demonstrate to people how our materials can be remade into amazing and beautiful things. It doesn't need to be junky. So yeah, so that's part of that. That's what that redesign fair is all about. And I guess not just to show people that are coming to visit, but also to encourage artisans and makers to make things out of recycled materials. Yeah.
Cool.
To be part of the solution.
So, and would you like to talk a bit about something that's coming up for you, or a new project?
So I have this permafrost project, and I went in January up to Tuck, and I got some permafrost, 485 pounds, and I hauled it down to Whitehorse.
Okay, so this is Tuktoyaktuk in the Northwest Territories for people who...
On the Arctic Ocean.
Yes. A road has gone through there just a couple of years ago. So, an all year-round road.
Yeah.
Okay, please carry on. Just,
yeah, that's a good idea.
In case someone's listening to this
in
Montreal or
something. So, yeah, I brought it down here with the plan to melt it in the McBride Museum, or not in the museum, but in the courtyard, because then it's a public place and people could see it and interact with it. And the plan was to do a time-lapse video there of it melting in the spring as nature just naturally melts it. And then, so they closed because of COVID, so I had to haul the 485 pounds out of there and into my front yard. And so I did it in the front yard. And then I ended up with like, my 2 hands cupped full of, not even full maybe, of material left after the permafrost melted. So the idea is to demonstrate how little soil is left after the permafrost melts. So communities in the circumpolar world, many of them, are just going to slump into the ocean. And that's only one aspect of climate change. There's lots of other things going on in the world, but it's one thing that I wanted to do to give people a personal connection to the reality of what's happening for one area of the planet. Yeah. So it will be an exhibit eventually, and I'm going to exhibit the small pile of soil with full-scale models of the permafrost before it melted, because I took forms with chicken wire and did measurements and weights and things like that. So.
And what are you thinking of making the permafrost out of?
plexiglass. Thank you, Nicole. So mostly recycled plexiglass, actually. So yeah, it's a thermoplastic, and so I will be using other thermoplastics too. So I have a bit to learn on that in that area, but yeah, I know it's possible. So I just have to figure out how I'm going to do it so that yeah, they are yeah representative of the ice blocks that I got. And yeah, I'm going to mix some words with it too, actually, because Joanna Lilly she came to visit it quite frequently during the melt because she's interested in the whole extinction thing, and so that's another form of extinction, I
You
suppose.
see, I think that's what, like, Janet Patterson was going to be up at the art center, and I believe that what they were aiming to do was an outdoor reading from Joanna Lilly's.
Oh, they didn't do it.
I think because of the rain.
Oh, disappointing.
But it's probably coming up. So if you're listening to this video soon, keep an eye out because Joanna Lilly, of whom Leslie Leong is speaking, is probably going to be doing a reading from her new book in the not too distant future. Yes. Is there anything in particular you'd like to add right now, Leslie?
I can't remember if there was other questions.
I think that kind of gives most of it. Maybe I'll just acknowledge that we had lovely people attending, and I thought I was recording earlier, so this is our second go at recording it. And so Janet and Dee, if you're wondering where you are, it's because I'm learning. And yeah, so this is our second go and a recording. Tune in next week. You can register for the artist talks by phoning Yukon Artists at Work at 393-4848 or emailing yaw@artlover.com, YAAW @artlover.com.
And these will be in
yes,
until the end of Monday.
Yes,
so you can see.
Yeah, you can come visit the forums, visit the milkmaid dress.
And many other things made out of recycled materials.
Yes, and Leslie Leong herself is here on Friday at 11 to 2 still, so you can come and have a visit and answer any questions or ask any questions you may still have. I'll also let you know that coming up we're going to be doing one artist talk for each of the 10 artists in the window over the course of the summer. This is number 2. Next week we'll be talking with Lillian Laponen, who's been doing some portraits of faces to add to her atmospheric watercolor and acrylics. She's actually going to be working on an iPad, working digitally.
Oh, wow.
After that, Dennis Shorey will be in the window. He'll be working on some antler and copper jewelry. And then we have Amber Church, and then Dee Bailey, and more to come. So tune in, have your favorite beverage handy. You can put your feet up. It's much more chill than your normal artist talk. Or you could even be working on your own art project and just treat this as a little podcast. So hopefully, let us know whether you saw this video, and we hope that you enjoyed it, and we hope that we get to connect with you for the next one. Anything further?
No, just thank you, Nicole. It was great.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Bye for now.